Welcome to Faithfully Growing Together in This Growth Moment, a podcast to help us all learn, grow, and transition together. I'm your host, Tim Fortescue, a life coach, coming alongside people of faith as we all manage transitions together. Today I want to talk to you about the 3 stages of change. If you're in a transition, coming out of one, or headed toward a transition, check out this episode. As I generally do, before we get into the content for today's episode, how are you doing? How have you been growing this week? What were your wins? What do you have to share about? One thing that I have been doing well and growing in this week is I've been consistent with my early morning wake up and routine. I recently read a book called Atomic Habits, and one of the principles in the book is habit stacking, which is layering habits on top of each other so that you gain momentum. And my morning routine of prayer and meditation, exercise, and work has been good for me this week. And it takes growth to get up when the alarm goes off, but I'm always glad that I did it and pushed through that struggle, as often we are when we have moments of growth. So what about you? What are your struggles, and how have you grown and how you interact with them this week? What are you grateful for? I'm really grateful for my family and friends this week. I'm also grateful for my church community as we'll begin gathering again in a modified COVID-friendly way this weekend. What about you? What are you grateful for? How are you doing? Take a moment and pause and reflect on that. If you'd like to, don't hesitate to drop me an email letting me know how you're growing and what you're grateful for. You can find my email in the show notes. Well, let's talk about today's content. We're constantly transitioning. Life is always changing. An old country song comes to mind that says, "Life's about changing, nothing ever stays the same." And really, that's true. Change is inevitable, and people are generally pretty uncomfortable with change, and it makes sense that change and doing something new makes us uncomfortable. I'm basing today's content off of the transition model that was created by change consultant William Bridges, and was published in his 1991 book, Managing Transitions. The model focuses on transition and not change, which is different from some approaches. Change is something that happens to people. They don't have to agree with it. Transition, on the other hand, is internal. It's what happens in people's minds as they go through change. The transition model highlights 3 stages of transition that people go through. And these are: number 1, ending, losing, and letting go. Number 2, the neutral zone. Number 3, new beginning. And Bridges says that people will go through each stage at their own pace. Those who are comfortable with the change will likely move ahead to stage 3 quickly, while others will linger at stages 1 and 2. Let's look at each stage a little further. Stage 1, ending, losing, and letting go. We experience stage 1 when we're first presented with change. It's often marked with resistance and emotional upheaval because people are being forced to let go of something they're comfortable with. Emotions such as fear, denial, anger, sadness, disorientation, frustration, uncertainty, and a sense of loss are often felt. We must accept that something is ending before we can begin to accept a new idea. If we don't acknowledge our emotions or the emotions of the person going through the change, we'll likely encounter resistance throughout the entire change process. This resistance must be met with empathy and understanding. We must allow ourselves and others to experience the raw emotions that often come with this stage. We must know that this stage is one in the change process. Once changes become more normal, they're generally for our good. If you're trying to help another person understand a new change, make sure that you're communicating clearly to reduce the fear of the unknown. And coaching can often help with this, to be able to have someone to sit with the person, or to sit with you, the person going through the change, to be a sounding board, to respond with empathy so that you know, or so that the person knows that they're not alone. Stage 2, the neutral zone. It's normal to be confused, uncertain, and impatient during this stage. Depending on how well we're managing the change, we may also experience a higher workload, both physically and emotional, as we acclimate and get used to new systems, ways of thinking, and ways of working. Think of this phase as a bridge between the old and the new. People may still be attached to the old, and it probably won't yet be clear what the new even is. It's normal to experience resentment towards the change initiative, low morale and low productivity, anxiety about our role, status, or identity, and skepticism about the change initiative at this stage. Despite all of this, this stage can be a time of great creativity, innovation, and renewal. Don't be afraid to embrace new ways of thinking and working during this stage. What the change even is and where we're headed may be unclear during the neutral zone. It's okay to feel lost or unsettled at this stage. We need to take time to go back to what our hopes and goals are for the change, and talk about what we're feeling, and talk frequently. A coach can provide support and questions to help you think deeper and see the possibilities that you can embrace as you go throughout the change process. Stage number 3, the new beginning. This stage is a time of acceptance and energy. We've begun to embrace the change here. We're changing the way we think and do, and we begin starting to see early wins from our efforts. At this stage, we are likely to experience high energy, openness to learning, and a renewed commitment to the change and those involved. At this stage, it's good for us to think of making the change sustainable. Take time to celebrate and reward yourself for making the change and for your hard work. However, don't become complacent. Remember that not everyone will reach this stage at the same time, so have patience and grace. And also remember that people can slip back to previous stages if they think that the change isn't working. So change is inevitable. It's a process, and we can't rush ourselves and others along. Change and making transitions is generally good and worth the work. If you would like help with change and managing transitions, I'd like to invite you to join me for a webinar this Friday, May 28th at noon Pacific time, where I take you through an exercise on thriving through change and transition. You can find a link to register for the webinar in the show notes. And please join me next week as we continue to learn, grow, and transition together. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please rate the podcast with a 5-star review. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'll put a link to my Facebook group in the show notes. Additionally, if you'd like to talk more, I invite you to book a free consultation at www.faithfullygrowing.com. But thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to what lies ahead as we all continue to faithfully